Oh hey, I was just listening to Cyberpunk's trailer music on my phone because as you can see, I cannot turn on my computer. My CPU fan just died and on idle I'm getting temperatures of 100 degrees, which obviously is not good for the CPU. Thankfully, my computer didn't run for too long before I noticed. My CPU started screaming at me and I turned it off just in time.
Oh, it's getting kind of hot. Hot.
So obviously this means that I need a new CPU fan, and I bought one that's not that popular, but it had some pretty good reviews and I took a chance on it. So let's see.
System online.
There it is, ARESGAME River with RGB glory and a 10% off coupon. No thanks for the protection, I live on the edge. And magically, the box has appeared in my house. Don't question it, it's movie magic. Compatible with Intel and AMD CPUs, and it says to use the humanized split type to install. On the side of the box, you can see the compatible brackets, the weight. It has 5 copper heat pipes, a 120mm fan, up to 1800 RPMs, 4-pin power connector, and a max noise of 31.6 decibels. So I looked into this, and 30 decibels is around a whisper or a clock ticking noise. And that never bothered anyone, right? So let's open the box and see what's in this bad boy. First thing you'll find right on top is a piece of paper that says there's a free gift waiting for you. All you have to do is to go to this website, answer a few questions, and receive this hard mousepad with RGB lighting. And so I excitedly go on the website, I fill out the survey questions, and well, I waited and waited and waited and nothing. There was no mousepad, I did not hear back from them. And I can only surmise that there is no mousepad, and this is just a fake promotion, which I sort of count as a mark against ARESGAME for the fake promotional material in the box.
Day 578, out here in the cold. Still no sign of the mousepad. I've already had to kill several dogs and use their skin to make a tent. It's crazy what the human are capable of when in need.
The next piece of paper in the box is the user's manual. This has an installation guide for AMD and Intel. It also has the specs again and the parts list of all the different parts and brackets and screws that come in this box. Speaking of which, this other box actually contains those screws and brackets. We got a little box in a box, boxception. Inside you will find the fan clip, the thermal paste, and it comes with a little cute spoon to scrape that paste around. Next, we have the Intel and AMD screws and little rubber stands. This is the back plate, and you'll have to screw this into the back of the motherboard. These are the mounting plates. And what's this? It also comes with a yellow starburst. Not my favorite color, but that's okay. For real though, it's leftover Halloween candy from 2 years ago. It's okay to eat that still, right? This review is brought to you by sugar, corn syrup, and viewers like you. This is what the fan looks like. It's kind of cool looking. It's nice and sturdy, doesn't feel flimsy to me. It has connections for power, RGB, and you can also connect it to a controller. And lastly, we have the heat pipes. I actually think this looks pretty cool. It's black instead of the usual silver or gray you see, and I like it for that. It also has 5 heat pipes at the bottom, and I can't wait to peel that later. I'm going to kind of quickly go over how I actually installed it on my computer. This is the back plate, and you should be able to use it for AMD or Intel. Now, depending on your setup, you'll have to use different holes, but I used 4 screws, and this is what it looked like for me by the end of it. Wow, and just look at that beauty. That's beautiful. Now you just slide the bracket onto the back of your motherboard, and you may have to play with the screws a little bit just to make sure they fit. On the other side, you got these rubber stops that you have to slide onto the screws, and by the end of it, it'll look like this.
Whoa!
These are the mounting plates, and these slide right on those screws, right on top of those stoppers we just placed. And as you can see, I just got to give it a little tap, little love tap, make sure it's right in the right place. These little screws with the cool little springs go on last and secure everything in place. Then with a screwdriver, you just tighten the screws, and everyone seems to have their own rituals here. Left side only, right side only, diagonals only, 3 turns at each screw, then move to the next.
3. No more, no less.
Basically, just screw them all in equally and don't over tighten so you don't damage any of the parts. Now comes time for the thermal paste. You get this tube with plenty of paste and this little spoon to spread that paste around. Now apply the paste. This part has to be very exact. Steady hands, no wrong moves. Anything can go wrong at any second. It has to be just the right amount of pressure. Okay, done. Now I have to spread the paste around on the CPU, and I know it looks like a lot, but I'm telling you, I'm just following the directions. It said to empty the tube and to spread it, and I know it looks like a mess, but you know, I'm more of a the more the better kind of guy. Now we place the heat pipes on top of the CPU. Here comes the part we have all been waiting for, that sweet, sweet peeling sensation. Oh yeah! Now press the pipes on top of the paste and gently push down. And don't worry, I did clean up the paste a little bit. You really don't need that much paste. This part slides in the middle and you have to screw it in. It's a little hard to put it in there, but the whole point of it is to keep everything nice and secure against the CPU. This is the fan once more, 120 millimeters, no sounds or wobbles when I spin it. It has 9 fan blades with a hydraulic bearing that's supposed to last 70,000 hours. The wiring is also done well and just overall looks like a good fan. This is the fan clip, and it must be where I use the humanized split type. And finally, this is what it should look like. You can see that clip on the side of the fan. It is sitting very tightly on top of my RAM, so size is of course something you should always keep in mind. But thankfully it's not causing any real issues. It is covering the view of one of my RAM sticks, so something to keep in mind. Alright, and finally let's see how this thing performs. I have an i7 7700K CPU, which I have read on some forums that it runs hot for some people, so depending on your CPU and airflow, things might be different, but I'm getting an average of 40 degrees Celsius on idle with a fan speed of 14 to 1500 RPMs. I downloaded Prime 95. It's a free stress testing tool for your CPU and RAM, and it's got a feature called Torture Test. Who knew CPU testing could be so kinky? You just have to change a few values depending on if you want to test your CPU, RAM, or both. I let it run for 10 minutes and I just monitored the CPU temperature that way. With the torture test, I was getting an average of mid to higher 60s. It even hit 70, and I was getting an average CPU fan speed of 1600 RPMs. And for testing performance during gameplay, I went back to good old Battlefield 1, which always seems to push my CPU to the limit. With gameplay, the highest temperature I achieved was 75 to 76 degrees Celsius, which is a little bit higher than I would have liked, but it's still good, and the fan speed, the highest was 1630 RPM. Now it's time to connect the RGB, so let's open this up again and connect it. Wait a second, 5V ARGB header is required on motherboard? If your motherboard is without a 5V 3-pin ARGB port, you need to buy an extra controller? So my motherboard doesn't have that port, so I bought the controller for $13, although I'm pretty sure you could use other controllers, but you know what, I just did it. This is the bag it comes in. It has the controller, a remote, and the manual. As for the cable, one end connects to the power and the other one to the fan to control the lights. The paper just says the remote has 17 buttons, what the buttons do, and some ways to test and change the settings. Now let's just connect this thing. Let's see if it works, and alright, it does. There we go. Honestly, the RGB is pretty cool. You can do all sorts of different combinations, patterns, colors. I'll go through some of them here, but there's just numbers and numbers of different things you can do with the colors. Some of the patterns are actually really mesmerizing. It's like you're at the dance club, but at home.
What are my final thoughts on this CPU fan? I think it's a good to very good purchase. I really like the look of it. I like that it has this kind of sleek black look to it, unlike the usual silver to gray looking ones. I think it's very well made. It feels sturdy. It's fairly quiet, although there are quieter fans out there, but this is a very good one. It's pretty straightforward to set up. I didn't have too hard of a time trying to make it fit on my motherboard. As far as performance goes, which is obviously the most important thing, on idle you can expect 30 to 40 degrees Celsius, and under very heavy loads you can expect mid to high 60s. I even hit 70 one time, but that's very acceptable. It's pretty good for a $30 to $40 CPU fan. Now, some of the negatives, it is kind of bulky. It's a fairly big CPU fan, so you have to make sure that there's enough room there and it's not going to hit other components, although that kind of goes with any CPU fan you're going to install. I personally don't like the clip-on fan method too much because at first it was rattling a little bit and I had to make sure it's really clipped on well. And unfortunately for me, the motherboard did not have the port for me to plug in the RGB light. So that's something to keep in mind. I did have to pay extra to get a controller, so unfortunately I ended up spending around $50 on this. And the last thing is I did not overclock my CPU, so for those of you who want to buy this and overclock and kind of push your CPU to the limit, I'm not really sure how that's going to perform. Like I said, under heavy loads it was already reaching 70, so I'm not really sure how well that's going to do. And thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Obviously, if you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comment section. And of course, I would appreciate your subscriptions and likes and all that stuff. But thank you again.